Standing under the dim light of the police station, Li Yuanyuan's fingers unconsciously pressed lightly on the hem of her shirt, feeling numb. Hesitating for a long time, she took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Officer, my boyfriend is missing." Her voice trembled slightly, but she tried to remain calm. Opposite, the policeman's eyes were sharp. He put down his pen and signaled her to sit down. He pushed a cup of water towards her, saying, "Don't be nervous, tell me slowly." She took the cup of water, but just put it on the table, not drinking it. "How long has he been missing? When was the last time you two contacted each other?" "Yesterday, he didn't return to the dormitory, and he didn't contact me at all." "What's his name? ID number?" "Qin Tao. ID number is..." She took out her phone. The screen showed a picture of Qin Tao smiling. The facial features were clear, but strangely cold. She quickly swiped to the photo of his ID card and handed it to the police. The police took it, wrote down the ID card number, then carefully swiped through Tan Dao's personal page, his brows furrowed. Suddenly, he raised his head, his eyes seemed a little surprised. "Is it true that in your school, besides your boyfriend, there is also a teacher who has gone missing?" She opened her eyes wide, her mouth slightly open, shook her head vigorously, and asked again, "Which teacher?" "The literature teacher, No Lack." No Lack. This name rang out like a thunderbolt in her head. No Lack, the instructor who the whole class behind her back often gossiped about as Monster No. Back then, a senior couldn't stand No Lack's torture and jumped from the dormitory right before graduation, breaking both of her legs. During her hospitalization, when the whole class came to visit, Wu Luo only listened to her vaguely, and even posted on social media asking everyone to control their emotions, saying that if they were not mentally stable, they were not qualified to study. At that time, although everyone was angry, because of the pressure from Wu Luo's professional power, everyone silently endured it. Half a year later, Wu Luo started to flirt with her, constantly hinting at the need for more in-depth communication. After being harassed by him with erotic actions several times, she almost collapsed. She once confided in Tan Dao, but he only advised, "Try to endure it, everyone has experienced this." He probably wouldn't dare to do anything too much. Unable to find help from her boyfriend, she complained to her close friend Li Nan. At that time, Li Nan was busy with his work as a specimen maker, skillfully skinning a deer. The sharp surgical knife cut layer by layer from the deer's lips, until all the bones and flesh were separated, and finally the entire skin was peeled off like taking off a sock. The technique was both precise and artistic. Li Nan placed the deerskin on the stainless steel tray, took off the bloody rubber gloves, looked up at her, and said coldly, "That old man, what would happen if he turned into a specimen?" Thinking back to what Li Nan said now, she couldn't help but shiver. She, Li Nan, and Qin Tao were all in the same class. On April Fool's Day that year, Qin Tao returned a letter to her. The letter was taken from her hands by everyone and read aloud. The person who signed it was Nguyen Nguyen. She suddenly became the laughingstock of the class. What is she thinking? Qin Tao is so handsome, how could that happen? Li Nguyen Nguyen should look in the mirror and see who she is. Those cruel words kept spreading, making her feel so wronged that she cried in front of Li Nan. But the only response she received was even harsher ridicule. Until Lu Nam took out a tissue and gave it to her, who was curled up and sobbing in the corner of the classroom, and said, "Trust me, no matter what, every time you're brave, you deserve to be respected." She looked up at Lu Nam with red eyes, a hint of disbelief, then emotion and relief. After that incident, her personality became more reserved, only being close to Lu Nam. In fact, she had always secretly liked Tan Dao, so she deliberately enrolled in the same university as him. Later, she took off her glasses, changed her style of dress, and became a beautiful girl. She took the initiative to contact and date him, and with her conservative personality, she couldn't withstand his persistent attacks and started dating. She even got pregnant with his child. After hearing the news, he initially blamed her for not taking birth control pills, but later coaxed her to go to the hospital for an abortion. Although he grumbled, after she had an abortion, he still bought bird's nest and tortoise shell to nourish her. Although they argued a few times, they were still quite compatible. They even discussed naming their first child after marriage. But one day, during a meal, Linam happened to see Tan Dao eating with two close friends. She quietly hid in a corner and secretly recorded their conversation. They were talking about their girlfriends. Tan Dao said blandly, "We've been dating for so long, I'm bored." A friend excitedly suggested, "How about we try changing girlfriends?" The other friend was even more ecstatic, boasting that he was used to changing girlfriends like changing clothes. After listening to the recording, her heart felt like it was poured with cold water. She trembled as she played back the recording, each word like a knife cutting deep into her heart. She didn't dare to believe it, until she saw him laughing and joking with her own eyes. Did she truly despair? Then, Li Nan said to her, "What if Qing Tao really betrayed you, turning him into a specimen? How are you?" Seeing her dazed, the policeman asked seriously. "Oh, it's fine. Do your boyfriend and Wu Luo know each other? Is there any conflict between them?" She quickly denied, "No, absolutely not." In fact, the two of them only knew each other through their encounters. After that, the policeman asked her some more information about Qing Tao, then told her to go home and wait for news. A few days later, she received a call from the police station. Excitedly thinking that there was news about Qing Tao, she hurried over. But instead of his news, she was informed about his special relationship with a woman named Rua Han. This time, she was summoned as a relative of the suspect. The police suspected that Tan Dao had murdered Rua Han and then fled because of fear of guilt. Rua Han's body was discovered in the river, with traces of strangulation before being thrown into the water. From the scraps under the victim's fingernails, Tan Dao's DNA was a perfect match. The police also extracted data from the two people's social networks and call logs, determining that they had a romantic relationship. The police hypothesized that Tan Dao had been with both his girlfriend and Rua Han. When Rua Han discovered it, she became jealous and the two had a conflict that led to the murder. She wondered, "So what is the relationship between me and him?" Her hands clenched so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Closing her eyes tightly, she tried to hold back her sobs, but tears still fell. A female police officer tried to comfort her. It was already dark. Leaving the police station, the cold wind swept past, her heart was in turmoil. She called Li Nan, telling him everything in tears. Li Nan calmly replied, "Forget it, let it go. Such a scum of a man, it's better to forget." Since Wu Luo and Qing Tao went missing, no one saw them again. Some time later, at an alumni meeting, she happened to meet a few classmates. They talked about old stories, saying that they had heard about the relationship between Qing Tao and Rua Han. Rua Han used to be Qing Tao's girlfriend, but then they broke up. Rua Han publicly abandoned Qing Tao and started dating someone else. This made Qing Tao angry, and then he started pursuing her. One evening, the police received new information. She was summoned to the station again. This time, they found Tan Dao's body, reduced to mere pieces of flesh. The police officer named Ho Tuan, who had handled the case from the beginning, showed her the evidence. He took out a few pieces of rotten flesh, which made her feel extremely nauseous. These pieces of flesh were discovered in the crevices of the rocks on the mountain by a retired police dog. The dog's owner, an old policeman, noticed its unusual reaction while walking the dog and brought the meat samples back for testing. The results showed that the DNA of these meat samples completely matched Tan Dao's DNA. The police then used dozens of other police dogs to search around the area and discovered a few more body parts. Police officer Ho Tuan concluded that Tan Dao's body had been meticulously dismembered. The perpetrator was very skilled, and it might not have been his first time committing a crime. She covered her mouth, trying not to let the nausea overwhelm her, tears streaming down her face. The perpetrator was too cruel and his dismemberment technique was too skilled. Did he have previous experience? Did Tan Dao have any grudges with anyone? Or was it related to illegal borrowing? Ho Tuan said. She shook her head, "No way. He's just a lazy, handsome, and sociable man. How could he make enemies with anyone?" On the way back to the dormitory, she couldn't help but call Li Nan, her voice trembling, "Qing Tao. On the other end of the line, Li Nan's voice was so cold that it made her shiver, but even the body wasn't intact. Serves you right, people like that, it's not worth letting them hurt you anymore. She shivered involuntarily, her eyes widened, almost screaming, so, you really, killed them? Are you crazy? On the other end of the line, Li Nan was silent. A moment later, a chilling laugh rang out. Do you think I can bear it? Now, I'm doing this, just for you. For me? She was surprised. Yes, for you. Her mind was blank, a buzzing sound rang in her ears. She quickly called a car and drove straight to Li Nan's workshop in the suburbs. That place used to be a chemical factory. After being abandoned, it was converted into an art exhibition area. Inside there were all kinds of sculptures, paintings, and even special display specimens that Li Nan created. When she arrived, the voice of Ho Tuan, the policeman, suddenly rang out from behind. We have been monitoring them. The police had installed a monitoring and listening device. Everything she said to Li Nan on the phone was recorded by them. Who is Li Nan? Ho Tuan looked at her intently, his eyes sharp. She hesitantly replied. My best friend, my best friend. Lead the way. Ho Tuan said, his tone not allowing for refusal. She went with them to Li Nan's workshop, knocked on the door, but no one answered. Entering the password into the door lock that Li Nan had provided, she opened the door. Inside was empty, only lifelike specimens remained. Lunam, Lunam. She called out loudly, her voice full of worry. Hu Jun looked around, his eyes filled with vigilance and scrutiny. The workshop was a loft-style apartment, about 5 meters high. The ground floor space was a large living room, above was a bedroom and a small working area. Every corner of the living room was filled with exquisite specimens, from tigers, lions, to butterflies, beetles. All of them showed the skillful skills of the creator. On the wall, a few photo frames attracted attention. Hu Jun picked up a photo frame, frowned and asked, Why aren't there any photos with your best friend? Haven't you two ever taken a photo? She explained, she's self-conscious, always feels like she's not good enough, doesn't like taking photos. They searched everywhere, but still couldn't find Li Nan. An uneasy feeling arose. While no one was paying attention, she secretly sent a message to Li Nan, Don't go back, the police are here. Although she didn't receive a reply, she believed that the message had reached the recipient. Shortly after, the police team surrounded the entire factory area. Police dogs were deployed to search every corner. Hu Jun began to ask carefully about every detail related to Li Nan, who was now considered a key witness. After a while, Hu Jun called her to the police station and gave her shocking news, Li Nan is a fake name. There is no information about this person in the system. She felt like she had fallen into a deep hole, her whole body was cold. Hu Jun continued, Not only that, we also found clues related to a horrific murder case from many years ago, the case on May 30th. The main suspect in that case was a person named Li Er, the same name as your Li Nan. She looked at the photo that Hu Jun pushed over. It was a picture of Li Er, small eyes, a low nose bridge, fair skin, a slightly plump figure, completely different from the Li Nan she knew. Li Nan, is that Li Er? Her voice trembled as she asked. Hu Jun nodded, his expression serious. Based on the information we have, we are almost certain that the two of you are one. We need more information from you to help solve the case. The Li family case that year was indeed very strange. 3 generations of the family, from old to young, were murdered without leaving any traces of struggle. The autopsy results showed that they were poisoned with ether. The police had suspected Li Er, the mother's illegitimate daughter, but due to insufficient evidence, they had to release her in the end. Hu Jun looked at her, his eyes sharp. If it wasn't her, then who else could have done such a crime? Returning to the dormitory, she still couldn't calm down. She couldn't believe that Li Nan, her best friend, could be the murderer. Her hands trembled, touching the phone, wanting to call Li Nan several times, but hesitantly not daring to press the button. In the dark room, there was only a dim lamp that cast a faint, weak light illuminating the small corner around. The wall was covered with soundproof foam, making the space even more private and stuffy. She found Qin Tao curled up in the corner, on a mattress, his entire body uncovered. His eyes were closed, his long and thick eyelashes casting shadows on his cheekbones, forming faint streaks of light. His unusually pale skin further enhanced the stark contrast, carrying a fragile beauty but making others unable to look away. Looking at him, she suddenly felt a strange excitement surge in her heart. Qin Tao seemed to realize something, his body moved slightly. He slowly opened his eyes, his pupils immediately constricted, reflecting extreme terror. He trembled, trying to shrink back towards the wall, but there was no way back. In the end. Who are you? Is it Nguyen? Or Lunam? Qin Tao stuttered, his voice as weak as a breath. His question pulled her back to reality, her breathing became uncontrollably rapid. The clock struck 4 a.m. On the screen, the message sent to Lunam still had no response. Tandao's panicked face and words kept echoing in her mind. Her wandering thoughts made her fall asleep without her realizing it. By the time her roommate woke her up, it was already noon. In the following weeks, Ho Tuan did not contact her. Recently, she often felt tired and nauseous. Thinking that she was pregnant, she decided to go to the hospital for a checkup. The B ultrasound results showed that she had been pregnant for more than a month. The baby was Tandao's. As an orphan, without parents, the person closest to her was Lunam, but now she had no news. For a moment, she even wished she could disappear from this world. Clutching the ultrasound paper tightly, she walked out of the hospital in a daze. Suddenly, the police siren sounded loudly. A group of police appeared, quickly surrounding her. Hu Jun stepped out of a car, not handcuffing, nor shouting, just calmly said, "Li Er, please follow us to the police station." The interrogation room was brightly lit by the lights shining directly at her. When she was taken into a narrow room, the cold handcuffs locked her wrists. The sound of the metal chain under the light of the lamp made the room even more tense. She sat there, motionless, her body stiff with fear, even breathing became difficult. Hu Jun sat opposite, his face under the light even more solemn. "Officer Hu, why did you arrest me?" she asked, her voice choked, tears falling unconsciously. "Li Er, how long are you going to deny it?" Hu Jun did not answer immediately but pushed a DNA test report towards her. The police secretly took her DNA sample and compared it with that of Laine's mother. The results confirmed that she was Laine. "That year, we didn't have enough evidence to charge you. After you were released, you kept changing your residence. Although your appearance changed due to weight loss and plastic surgery, nothing can change your DNA. The fake name you're using is Lang Nguyen, but this person's true identity was murdered by you." Hu Tuan's words were like hammer blows hitting her mind. "Nguyen is a regular customer who ordered butterfly specimens from you. As an orphan, after her adoptive parents had their own child, they decided to emigrate, but she chose to stay. You made an appointment to meet Nguyen when she got into college. After killing her, you disguised yourself as her and completely replaced her." The room seemed to freeze, each passing second was suffocatingly heavy. "We talked to Tandao's roommate. He had shown signs of mental instability and was even sent for psychological therapy. The specimens that she and Li Nan called works, the transaction receipt only had one name, Li Er. And those specimens were actually people who were related to her." Hu Jun's conclusion echoed throughout the interrogation room. Li Nan is actually just a personality that she created to deal with the past, or perhaps it could be said, another person within her. Hearing Hu Jun's words, her face paled, her lips trembling, unable to speak. She bit her lip so hard that it hurt, the pain seemed to remind her that everything that was happening was real. A wave of dizziness surged up, and thousands of chaotic sounds echoed in her head. "No, this can't be," she whispered over and over, tears falling drop by drop onto the interrogation table. Hu Jun looked at her, sighed softly, and said calmly, "These things are very difficult to accept." But the truth was, Li Nan, her best friend, was actually just another part of her personality. This is a form of cognitive disorder, called dissociative identity disorder. How can there be two people in one? She struggled to speak, each word being forced out of her throat. Hu Jun continued to explain in detail, then asked her about what happened to Qin Tao and Wu Luo. She could only recount the vague memories she still remembered. Hu Jun took her back to the specimen workshop. Here, she discovered a new specimen, a chimpanzee over 2 meters tall. The chimpanzee's eyes seemed to bore deep into her soul, lifeless, but filled with indescribable pain and resentment. She trembled as she pointed at the chimpanzee specimen. Here, in here. Hu Jun immediately signaled to his teammates. They carefully examined the giant chimpanzee specimen, and finally discovered a hidden compartment, cleverly hidden inside its body. When the hidden compartment gradually opened, inside was Qin Tao's body that had been processed and made into an ice-cold specimen. Her tears flowed again, her vision blurred, and her body collapsed without strength. Hu Jun's face became more solemn than ever. He quickly ordered his subordinates to take Qin Tao's body away and conduct further investigation. Not long after, they discovered Wu Luolua's body in a kneeling position, hidden inside another rhino specimen.
Side story. 1. Hu Jun's perspective. At the specimen workshop in the suburbs, the police found 2 bodies that had been processed into specimens. The bodies were hidden so carefully that it could be called a puzzle. The perpetrator suffered from dissociative personality disorder, with the main personality being Li Wanyuan and the secondary personality being Li Nan, also known as Li Er. She was also the perpetrator in the tragic murder case on May 30th involving the deaths of 5 people. Throughout the investigation, Li Wanyuan's main personality always denied all guilt. Even when she discovered her boyfriend's body, she cried so much that she fainted. When the police contacted the victim's family, they pleaded for a stay of execution because she was pregnant and the baby was their only child. During her pregnancy, Li Nguyen gave birth. After giving birth, when the nurses left, she pulled out the IV needle and used it to cut her own carotid artery. Despite emergency treatment, she died in the hospital room. Before she died, she said, "I deserve to die, but the baby is innocent. Thank you for letting me give birth to it." The baby was not given an official name, only called Tan Nguyen. Extra Story 2. Li Ni's perspective. My name is Li Ni. I am 25 years old. When I was young, I was praised for having a beautiful mother and a talented father. But that luck did not last long. When I was 7 years old, my father was hit and killed by a drunk driver on the way to buy lobster. After that, my mother used the compensation money to send me back to live with my grandparents. My mother almost never came back to visit me again, probably because she thought I was fat and ugly. My grandparents loved me very much, but when I was 10 years old, their house was demolished for construction. My mother suddenly returned, bringing many gifts and a cake. I still remember the feeling of joy at that time very clearly, although I have forgotten most of the other things. But during an argument with my grandparents, my mother said something that I will never forget. "I really can't stand the sight of you, you stupid and ugly thing." My grandfather was so angry that he had a stroke. When he got to the hospital, the doctor said he had no chance of saving me. I only had my grandmother left. When I was in middle school, I met Tan Dao, the only person who treated me well. But the price I had to pay was the disdain of my classmates. One day, after being ridiculed too much, I found a dead stray cat. I brought it home, searched online for how to make a specimen, and unexpectedly, the product received a lot of praise. After that, I started making animal specimens and selling them online. With the money I earned, I bought a ring to give to my mother on Mother's Day. But when I showed her the ring, she looked at me with disgust and pulled me into a corner, saying, "I don't need this. You are the biggest disgrace of my life." One night, while I was walking, I was attacked and raped by a stranger. From that day on, another person appeared in my mind, Lenam. Lenam was not afraid, not weak. She told me, "They don't deserve to live well. If you suffer, then all of them will suffer like you." I started making chemicals, even using them to kill my mother's family, just to see the suffering in her eyes. I felt that people like her, like those who had hurt me, did not deserve to live in this world. Summoned to the police station but without any solid evidence, Li Ni was released. During her trip after the exam, she accidentally met Li Yuanyuan, who used to be her specimen buyer. Li Yuanyuan's adoptive parents treated her very well, even better than her biological mother. Life seemed happy and peaceful. From the old class chat group, she learned that Qintao had also been admitted to the same university as her. This news made her extremely happy. 1. Li Nan reappears. Li Nan, her other personality, secretly acted. She drugged Li Yuanyuan, then used sulfuric acid to destroy her appearance, then dismembered her body and hid it in the forest. From then on, she used Li Yuanyuan's identity to continue living her life. Li Nan always thought that this was to protect her best friend. 2. Qintao and Li Yuanyuan, with her delicate appearance and slim figure, quickly attracted Qintao's attention. The first time they walked together in the rain, Lin Nguyen shared an umbrella with Tan Dao. Even though the umbrella was tilted towards her, making one of his shoulders wet, he just smiled and did not blame her. Gradually, they became closer. Tan Dao began to care more about her. There were days when he waited for her at the cafeteria with a hot meal or helped her tie her shoelaces. They kissed for the first time. At first it was a light kiss, but it quickly became more passionate and deep. However, as their relationship grew closer, Lin Nguyen became afraid. The terrifying memories of the past made her push Tan Dao away. But Tan Dao did not leave. He hugged her and said, "I'm here. Don't be afraid." Extra 3. Jealousy and Lanam's plan. Lanam, in a fit of jealousy, decided to take action. She drugged Tan Dao and used his phone to make an appointment with an ex-girlfriend named Nuok Han. When Ruo Han arrived, she was also drugged. Afterwards, Li Nan strangled Ruo Han, creating a fake scene of Ruo Han attacking Qintao. Not stopping there, Li Nan also tricked an instructor named Wu Lo into a trap. By drugging and killing Wu Lo, she crafted both of them into specimens for display. Lanam told himself, men are only obedient when they hang on the wall. Extra story 4. The end of Tan Dao was imprisoned in the specimen workshop. Under Lanam's control, he was chained and lived in a state of despair. Every day she prepared meals and cleaned for him, but also continuously drained his blood to serve the purpose of making specimens. Finally, when his strength was exhausted, Tan Dao became withered like a zombie. He recognized two opposing personalities in Lin Nguyen. One personality was gentle, truly loved him. The other personality was cruel, saw him as a display object. Tan Dao once begged to be released, promising to marry her and build a family together, but her other personality never agreed. On the last day when Lanam locked him with chains, he weakly said, "I just want to name my child Tan Nguyen." Extra story. The end of Lin Nguyen. Lin Nguyen was later arrested and had to give birth in prison. In her final days, she dreamed of returning to her workshop, filled with perfect animal specimens. These specimens were the pinnacle of herbarium art, vivid images immortalized in glass cases. She remembered her crazy dream, to create the most beautiful human specimen, surpassing nature. She whispered her last words before closing her eyes. Beauty sometimes lies in the eternal pause.